actually, recently, I was meeting with a client who'll remain nameless, and I was in there getting all excited about convergence, and in particular off the back of an announcement we made with Nielsen, where we're now able to fully verify the delivery of an ad in TV alongside the delivery of an online ad. And then we were talking about how we've got this wonderful performance data, and we can help them uncover the performance in TV alongside the performance in online. And we were talking about dashboards, and I was really going off on data. And I think I was sort of, basically talking up data, much like everyone in the industry is talking up data now. And I thought it was one of my best presentations. Retired to the bar later on that night, and the guy took me aside and said, "Your data really sucks." And I was really sort of taken aback by that. And I said, "Well sort of, what do you mean? This is terrible." Well, he said that I'm not sure that the data you're talking about can help us measure what we need to measure across TV and online. It's really unclear. He said that our brand's about driving emotion and desire. All this data you're talking about, what's the relevance of that to making my advertising more emotional? He then went off and started talking about the fact that it wasn't really clear who owned the data in the first place. Is it MediaMind's data? Is it the publisher's data? Is it the advertiser's data? He then went on to say that maybe the consumers don't even want us to use the data, as Frederick's presentation was about. And then, you know what? A lot of this data is just not differentiated at all. So why does data suck in the new world of advertising? That's the sort of the question the client was posing, and we thought it'd be a good sort of time to pose that to a lot smarter people sitting here, and you guys out here as part of this presentation, or part of this panel. And hopefully these guys are going to do a bit of talking. You're going to do a bit of talking. Dean's probably going to force you to do a bit of talking. So here's the way we're going to set this up. The guys are just going to introduce themselves. We're then going to go into a quick fire round where I'm going to ask them a bunch of questions. I'm going to pose them a bunch of answers, and they've just got to answer with one. They've got to answer the questions with one of my answers, and then we're going to open it up to a full discussion. So let's just do a quick intro.
Yeah. Hello. Hello. I'm Marie Leloy, or Marie Laloy in French. I'm in charge of digital media strategy for Peugeot and Citroën. And ich bin ein advertiser. And I will try to give you the point of view of advertiser about big data.
Hello, my name is Alain Heureux, and ich bin you, I'm you. I'm the trade association, IAB Europe, Interactive Advertising Bureau. Many of you hopefully know who we are, but so we do represent the digital advertising industry. I'm representing the European platform, but we have 27 IABs all over Europe, and we try to protect and promote this beautiful industry.
Hi, I'm Sylvain Leborg. I'm EVP Data Platform for Havas Digital. I'm responsible for defining and implementing the Havas Digital strategy around data management, especially leveraging the investment we've made in the past year in big data analytics.
Good afternoon, I'm David Gosen, and I run Nielsen's digital business in Europe. And unsurprisingly, I don't believe data sucks. I think it probably blows, but I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Hello, I'm Marc Panic, Group M. Group M is the media investment branch of WPP. You've seen some people that are part of the group earlier on. And basically, we're the guys executing all the great stuff that you've seen during the former presentations.
Okay, great. Can everyone hear them? I just want to let these guys know there's always a couple of rules on my panel. If any unnecessary positive mentions of our competition more than twice, they get a yellow card. And if there's any biting or any sort of punching or anything like that, you'll be red carded and have to step out, okay? All right. Okay, so let's just go to this sort of quick fire round.
Why are you looking at me?
Okay, so these are just some quick questions. We're just going to go down the line in no particular order. So Mark, maybe we'll just go with who's holding the mic. Who do you trust more with your data, your credit card company or Facebook?
Credit card company, no doubt.
Okay, David. What would be the bigger nuclear meltdown for online privacy? A massive data breach of Facebook data or of a telco company?
Facebook data.
Facebook's getting a bad rap here. Okay. Sylvain, I feel my credit card data is safer when I hand it to a waiter in a restaurant than an e-commerce company.
E-commerce company.
Okay. Not doing well online here at the minute. In 2015, who's going to be the best positioned company to help you mine your first-party data through marketing channels? IBM or your agency? We'll have...
IBM. Sorry.
So that's one thing I want to sort of talk about, is to get this like business models and agency versus vendors and all that kind of stuff. Okay, Dean, are you online here? Are you? What would freak you out more, receiving a mail order subscription to a porno magazine or an online ad offering a subscription to a porno site?
If I'm living with my mother, definitely the direct response article then.
Okay, that's bad for the direct response companies. Okay, by 2015, Alain, the percentage of online users who will turn on the do not track feature will be 25%, 50%, or 75% of the internet population?
Less than 25.
Less than 25%. Firefox is already at 25%, I believe, globally. Okay, we're almost there. Within the next 3 years, a new company is going to come out of nowhere and create a massive business out of managing your personal data and helping you to sell it to publishers or advertisers who want to use it. Mark, is that a true or false statement?
That's a very difficult question. I would tend to think that there's a high chance that it might happen.
Okay, and what would you pay to have your digital profile completely deleted from the web? Would you pay $10, $15, or $50 to a company who would do that for you on a yearly basis?
$10.
$10. So, well, we'll get to that. So, okay. So, I just wanted to get the juices flowing. So, there's a lot to discuss in, as I set up with, the unfortunate client who told us that data sucked. I really want to focus, though, in around the sort of beginning to focus in this area of sort of the value equation, right? I think we've all grown up in a world where there's just an acceptance that you give up huge amounts of data to receive free content as you travel around the web, and advertising comes with that. And I think that many people have got obsessed with cookies and tracking and privacy, and we're all up in arms about that, and we talked about the politicians and everything. I have a personal view that the thing is less about perhaps tracking and privacy, but it's really about value. And that was, again, some of the stuff that Frederick was talking about earlier on. Consumers today have a really strong sense of what their data is worth and how or where they want to share that. To give you an example, there's a company called Disconnect that's newly started in the US. It has about 1 million subscribers. Based on the model that I was alluding to in the quickfire. You basically pay $5 or $10 a year to be completely disconnected from the internet, to have your trail removed and your digital threads taken away. And the business model, and this is one of about 5 different businesses trying to do it these days, is that they will disconnect you, and then you'll pay for that, and they will share some of the money with publishers for their lost advertising revenue, but then you will then be reconnected. And the reconnection process will be the process by which you will give up some of your data to advertisers and publishers who want to advertise to you. Again, that's very different from what Frederick was saying, what Nike's doing. In the Nike example, there's a lot of data that gets released back into the digital world. Other advertisers are now taking that and remarketing to you and addressing you. So I suppose I just wanted to sort of pose that as maybe data sucks because right now what's happened is that the value equation, consumers are so aware of the value of their data, they're going to ask for more, and it's just made advertising more difficult. We have to deliver more value to our consumers to get their attention and to be relevant. So I suppose what I wanted to do, and maybe Alain, you can kick off, is in this world of sort of greater stakes, right, for consumers, where they're expecting more, the value exchange is, their expectations are higher. what do we see as publishers and advertisers needing to do, to work with consumers in that new reality?
I think in general, when we see what the data will become, and we were talking today about oil or fuel, or will it be the currency of the future, I think one element that end publishers, advertisers, and agencies need to be careful about is about this trust relation with the consumer. And we need to gain back for a certain part the trust. We need to gain it back, and we need to be aware that even if we try to gain it back or not, regulation has started. And that's something, it's often a debate that people are having, like, will it happen or not? And we should stop talking about yes or no. In Brussels, there are like 80,000 people working to create laws. That's their job. You cannot go there and say, don't make a law. They've done it for the car industry, for tobacco, alcohol, for any industry. They've regulated. And now they have decided to regulate data. And it's not, I think one of the speakers was saying it's very populistic, like any commissioner in Brussels will find it sexy to talk about privacy and data protection. No, it's just, it's there, and between now and 5 to 7 years we will have a new data protection directive. The job has started, and we all together, each of you, people acting in this ecosystem, we're all responsible now to make sure that we have a good law, because that's still where democracy is good. We can still influence and participate and make sure that we have a law that allows us to continue to drive further our industry, innovate and create what we're doing, but we're going to have law. And the thing that we as a trade body are saying, work all together also to develop self-regulation, because self-regulation can soften law. It cannot replace law, it can soften law. And we have launched a couple of initiatives in Europe and in the US called, it's a thing around an icon where we try to be more transparent and give control tools to the consumer. And that is something where everybody of you needs to participate. And we don't see yet enough people from the entire ecosystem participating. Advertisers, agencies, media, you need to participate and to work. Make sure that we can create a reliable self-regulatory platform, and that we can talk with the regulator and with the consumer and develop a proper law. And that's for me the most important, because I think that business rules on measurements and pricing will organize itself. But this is a bigger challenge.
Yeah, I could not help noticing that when you talked about, like, who owns the data, you said is it the advertiser, is it MediaMind, like the technology provider, is it the agency, is it the publisher, and you didn't say, or could it be the consumer? And I think that we have to actually respect the fact that if the consumers don't feel like they can actually make a choice on how their data are being used, which is precisely what the work that the IAB is doing through the ICON and so on, we're not going to be in a position to influence the European Commission or the Parliament in the US. So this is a given. This is not to be discussed. This is the basis of the discussion that we need to have with these guys. Because when you look at how this is, I think it was indeed Frédéric who said that, like, the politicians are populistic. It's true, but the consumers are and the consumers' unions are getting more and more flamboyant, if I may use that word, about it. They're becoming very noisy about it, and we mustn't overlook as well the influence that the traditional media have on this debate, and they're obviously in a position where, like, they feel that, for example, Google's success is very much based on how they manage to leverage their own content. So against, like, these three very powerful influencers, the industry on its own appears to be very weak. Advertising is not a very liked business, and therefore we need to be very, very humble and modest in the way we approach this with the regulator.
Can I just add something? In terms of, I think it's quite important that we try to define what data is. Yeah, because there's a huge amount of information that can be stored on individuals and groups of individuals. From names, addresses, ages, salaries, with the mobile phone carriers, location, online usage. So Some of it may be safer data, some of it may be more dangerous. But when we talk about data, we just tend to lump data into one big bucket. And I think as this conversation continues, there needs to be almost a segmentation of that data in terms of its value to the consumer and value to business.
The thing is, a lot of the commentary there and a lot of the industry commentary seems to be about transparency and about control, right? But I'm not really aware of most of these initiatives that are out there of really giving the consumer control. It's a very sort of, they're binary examples, right? It's like, you know, get me off this list. In the same way that people get themselves off the mailing list in the US, they probably have them in Europe as well. I mean, I think what consumers are asking for is ways in which to, you know, be able to show their intent, to control the intent that they show in the public to advertisers and publishers to help them get better advertising, right? There's a book, I'm not sure if any of you guys have read it, by a guy called Doc Searls. It's called The Intention Economy, which is about just this point, which is, you know, the world's going to move to a place where we will decide, maybe through some kind of digital locker or some kind of thing that we carry around with us, whether we are in the market for a car, whether we are in the market for a washing machine today, rather than all of the, I think the way the economy works today, like companies like BlueKai and Xlate, it's all about deciphering intent, right, from people who haven't admitted that they're doing anything, which I think is part of the, right, none of us really stuck our hand out and said, we want to be advertised to now, right?
But so, to come back, on the law that will appear, there will be a definition of different kind of data, personal, anonymous, and we try to come up with a middle layer of, we call it nearly like pseudonymous data, because one cookie, I cannot identify who you are. But thousands of cookies during several months, I can start to profile you. And so there will be a time frame that will be described in a definition. So that's certainly like one point that will come up in the law. And the debate that we were flagging now, so that everybody knows as well, quite quickly the debate about cookies was all turning around opt-in and opt-out. What is for me like, imagine you're trying to buy something, you go on a website, and the guys are showing suddenly a pop-up because we want your prior explicit consent. It is a moment where you need something. You're going to click quickly yes, because you're eager to get to the next stage, to buy something or to get information. And we're saying to the regulator, it's much better to have a permanent icon that is there, that reminds you constantly that you have a choice. And then when you click on it, you come to a platform that is your online choice, a website in Europe translated in 23 languages. You can go there and it's like your consumer cockpit. You're sitting in your cockpit and you can read what is a cookie, what is an IP address, what is tracking, tracing, and you get a lot of things where you can just opt out and say, this company I don't trust, opt out of that one I keep, this one I get out. You can come back regularly to just change your mind and say...
But what are you opting? The thing is, I suppose the question is, you're just opting out of things, right? What are you opting in for?
Of the fact that people are tracking you using information that relates to you.
Right.
That is a cookie in this particular case, but tomorrow it will be location-based services.
And what if you want to change? I suppose the point I'm trying to sort of, you know, debate here is, what if a lot of that data is wrong, right? A lot of the data that those companies have about you is just plain wrong, right? And it's all being deciphered by stuff that it was crumbs that you created by trailing around the web, right? I think the argument that perhaps we need to have opportunities in a more positive way to tell advertisers and tell publishers what we're interested in. I'm not really aware of the industry moving there yet. And I think that's sort of what some of these new exciting companies that I see are beginning to try and experiment with, is whether, you know, you can release your data to companies and be paid to have those companies use that data to then advertise back to you. I mean, I don't know if you guys, maybe you just can call bullshit on that, whether that's an idea that you think is going to, you know, be successful. Yeah. Sorry.
I think you may have moved on a bit. I think Andrew, to be frank. I think we're kind of overestimating how much we think the consumers actually know about data. And I think that's why they're freaked out so much. And I think it's quite ironic that for a communications industry, we've been quite rubbish at explaining what this actually is, hence why people are so freaked out about it. I don't actually know how many people would be confident in getting a company that would wipe you off the internet and then sell back some of your data to somebody else. I think there still is a lot of confusion about actually why is John Lewis following me around the internet? I was only there for 2 minutes. I think people still don't really understand what it is, and we need to be a bit more granular in consumers understanding what all this data actually means and what we're going to do with it. More of a statement.
So it's just an education. So that just sounds like notification and education and transparency.
I think it's not a just, though. I think it's a big issue. I think that's why we're here, because people don't actually know. Well, I think the onus has to be on the industry. I think, and that's why regulation comes in, because people don't understand it, so they feel like they have to educate consumers. So I think we're kind of trying to collect lots of data at the same time as education. So we need to decide what's more important, and are we going to make sure consumers know what we're doing with this data and where it lives and how you actually use it.
Well, I think that's part of the problem. That's why I want to find out what Marie's going to say. So if I have an email, okay, I opt out of the email from that brand or that product from that brand. I don't opt out of cheater mail. I don't opt out of the technology company. And that's what the IAB's given me. You don't want to be tracked, opt out of MediaMind, opt out of DoubleClick, opt out of whatever else. I don't want to opt out of technology, I want to opt out of tampons, because I'd rather hear about BMWs, and actually I don't want to hear about BMW 5 Series, I'm interested in BMW 3 Series. And the problem is all you've done is highlight, look at these scary people who are tracking you, and there's no value to me as a consumer, except telling me about cookies and IP. I don't give a flying fuck about cookies or IP addresses. What I want to know about is tell me better about BMWs and don't tell me about tampons. And that's the problem with the industry of what we're doing right now, is we're not actually giving them what they want, which is, I'm interested in a Peugeot car. So that's why I'm interested in because the online industry is completely different to how we treat email.
You want to talk about that, Mary?
I think we all have to be responsible about the communication we give to internet users. We have to be responsible about capping and cookie collections, duration. Last August, I went to Bali, so I flew to Denpasar. And when I came back in September, I had Expedia advertisement for Bali hotel. So I think we need to be more and more relevant in order to have the confidence of internet users. Other point is that our industry is based on tracking tools. That's how we optimize the campaign. That's how we optimize our investments, and I think we hold fear here, a certain level of laws that can be restricted. But this is the building of our media industry, digital media industry.
To come back to Dean, what we still try to do is to create emotions and engagement from the consumer and to talk to them about relevant brands. If they don't want Pampers, but they want Citroën and Peugeot, let's give them what they want. That's what we all try to do, to make it more efficient, more relevant. But the thing is, to get to that point, advertising will become more and more technology-driven and data-driven. And therefore, there will be a perception from the consumer and from the regulator, Big Brother is watching me. And that notion we need to take away and just say, like, Big Brother is watching you, but with certain rules, regulations, and with certain ethics.
But Elaine,
ethic...
That's been there since the Roman time, and we have the who watches the watchers. I mean, the whole thing, it wasn't about advertisers, the problem. It's the politicians. They want the data because they want to protect me from Homeland Security and terrorists. I can't trust them any more than I can trust an advertiser. That's not the point of what we're saying here. I want to hear about stuff I'm interested in. I buy magazines about the product. I watch TV shows about the product. I'm interested in cars. I'm interested in specifically Peugeot cars, and particularly Peugeot particular type of car, but I'm not interested in a certain product. And that's the thing that we all have to understand as consumers. It's not I have a problem with technology, or I have a problem with advertising, or a problem with I have a problem with certain aspects. And I think that's what we're trying to solve that we haven't actually solved as an industry yet.
So Dean, you want data to work for you, not against you, is basically the answer.
As a consumer, yeah, I want to get the stuff that's relevant to me and not other relevant. So I don't want to opt out of technology. I want to opt out of a brand.
I want to bring to Sylvain in because we had an interesting conversation. You know, I think part of the challenge here is it almost becomes circular, right? This is a conversation about why data sucks, and then a lot of the answer always seems to be throw more data at it, right? So apparently it's all just going to get better if we throw more data at it. Oh, those are bad ads. Oh, target them better. Use more data. So I mean, Sylvain, you know, we were talking about how you know, perhaps less is more, and you know, your experience, you know, with some of those travel ads that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think what we succeed in doing in this industry in the past 5 years, we managed to make data look like evil. We managed to make customers see data as something bad, something threatening them. So I completely understand the reaction from the EU and from the IAB, a very technical one based on limiting technology. That's because we have been bad at explaining to the customers how we could be better at advertising to them using their data. So now they do not trust anyone in sharing relevant information. And also, another consequence of that is that we do not get enough data today. We can collect data about intent, but the data about conversion, realization is never shared. That's why we retarget again people that did buy a travel to Bali or did buy a car. So we should be able to open the discussion around data, be able to share with customers what we could provide them as value so that they could evaluate the real value of the data they can share with us, and we could define what's the real offer in advertising to push products in a way that will engage them with the brand.
Can I just add that? I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question particularly clearly, but I do think because we're incredibly close to this topic, we know significantly more than the average person on the high street. And they don't understand what happens to their data, I think, when they put it in or when they see a cookie alert or what happens. You know, who's read the terms and conditions from the App Store when you want to download an app? Very few people, I would think. You download a torch app for your iPhone, so you want it to turn into a torch, and then as part of those terms and conditions, it actually asks you to grant permission for that application to access your whole database of contacts, allows them to contact that database, and allows them to track you using GPS. Okay? So, you know, I think people don't understand the depth of this issue, point number one. I think point number two is, you know, we're caught in this place where we say we've got too much data or we don't have enough data. But as organizations, one of the biggest problems I find when I talk to advertisers and, in fact, some agencies is they don't have enough resource to process the data on a real-time basis, to use that data effectively, to get better at what they need to do. So I think this whole data conversation needs to lead to a fundamental rethink in the way that advertisers, agencies, and data providers can handle, analyze, and process this data, obviously for the good of the end consumer, but ultimately we're all in this business to make money and to make money.
So what do ads look like in that world? I mean, you know, so when we were talking about there's just going to be less of them and they're just going to be better. Or the example of Nike is they don't need to advertise anymore because they built a service proposition that's so powerful where people just start, releasing data that Nike can then, leverage to start, producing better and better products. Like, what do we think? MediaMind, has our dynamic creative optimization product that we're super excited about that uses data to make ads more targeted and more relevant. Little plug for MediaMind. I don't think we say necessarily, and as a result, there are going to be less ads. I mean, in fact, I think our business model would like there to be even more ads, albeit ones targeted better with data. So, I mean, is the outcome here that there'll just be less ads that are just better in some way? I don't know.
Again, I would just say, the challenge is for online advertising to grow its share of the total media mix. You know, if we were sitting in a TV audience, I'd probably say for TV to defend its share of media. You know, print.
You work for a TV company? No.
We cover all media. So, you know, I think if you look at the area that's suffering the most, and that's print. But if we look at the online advertising space specifically, how can we create an environment where the online advertising business grows? Yeah? How do we steal share? And I think the opportunity is maybe there is greater targeting, but by bringing more and more businesses into the online market, by bringing more and more advertisers to shift their spend, that's where you'll see the growth. But you need the targeting and you need the accuracy. Again, you did a plug, so I'll do a plug. Nielsen rolled out something called online campaign ratings in the US, which measures GRPs online. And we found that 50% of campaigns were not targeted to the target that the client wanted. So they weren't hitting the target. So in that sort of world, yeah, we need greater efficiency to deliver the growth in the industry that we all want.
By the way, he's a partner, so he didn't get a yellow card. That's okay. Part of the rules, okay?
But so the answer was more or less, it's less waste. It's maybe more advertising, but more relevant advertising to the consumer that are interested in certain brands and products, and less waste. Because we all know it was always, in any Congress in the 90s, the phrase was always, half of advertising is wasted, I don't know which half, so we need to continue to throw around. Well, if we can just diminish waste thanks to technology, that would be great. And then we still can give more advertising because hopefully they will be relevant to the audience.
So, Maria, maybe you can, what data are you guys finding for Peugeot is like, I mean, there's so much crappy stuff out there, right? You know, people, third-party data, everybody's saying they got the best stuff. You know, I think most people would argue a lot of the third-party data is, everyone's got most of the same stuff in some bucket somewhere. Like, what are you guys using that you're finding the most powerful for what you're doing online?
I think the main point is who owns the data. From the point of view of the advertiser, when we talk about data that belongs to us, we talk about CRM or PRM database, and it's never connected to ad server or web analytics system. And the main point is this one. And I think we will win efficiency by connecting everything. And when we ask who owns the data, I'm dreaming about our own data management system. And today, publishers have some data, agencies have, media agencies own some data, even our creative agencies. So that's a kind of mess. And I think in the future, we should develop our own data management system in order to have the control about the profile we want to target.
Marie, can I ask a question to you then? Have you ever asked a question about what's the benchmark? So when you actually look at a campaign and analyze it, and you ask for a benchmark, is that something you've ever asked for?
You're talking about
any campaign that you look at.
Yeah.
Okay. So you need to be able to compare how your results are done against the wider industry. How would you do that if Havas don't have your data? How would you do that if you owned all the data? How would you compare to know if you're doing good or bad against an industry-wide thing, unless there is something at a higher level that can offer you that comparison table?
If we own the data, I think we will be the provider of the data for the campaign. So our media agencies will continue to buy and optimize the campaigns, but we will be the provider of good data from the display to the sales. And there's between 45 days between display of an ad and the sales in a dealership. And today we're not able, the only indicator is the cost per lead. And there's so many fakes that are generated in our database, you know. So we need more efficiency between the impression, the click to the leads, than to the sales.
So I would just like to answer to Dean, since he named Havas. We are extremely careful in the way we manage data for our clients. We believe that the data is owned by the client, so we don't mix it. We don't do benchmarks. This is not our job. What we do, we use the data we can collect for the client, for his own campaign, and optimize his buys and targeting based on that. But we do not cross-reference, we do not benchmark, and we do not share the data outside of the client's realm.
I bet you'd combine them together to turn around and negotiate rates, though, wouldn't you?
Sorry, I didn't hear
I bet you would combine the data to negotiate rates and say, we're buying this much impressions over a year, and as a result of it, I want better rates. Would that be a conversation you'd have? Because if that's the case, and you are combining data, you're combining it into whatever, which comes back to what your colleague said earlier on, it's all about how personal the data is. But you are using the collective massive data as part of your business operations. I mean, that's how our industry works, is it not?
Isn't that what our clients are asking the media agency to do?
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, it's like, the idea is to get, the best value proposal out of there.
Right.
So using data is helping, in getting a better information that, is helping in this kind of negotiation. But, I mean, I don't want to speak for Havas, obviously, Sylvain, but, if we were not doing this, somehow it's got to be done in a very ethical way and very transparent way, obviously. But if we were not doing this, we wouldn't be doing a good job. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, I don't know if this is what Dean's getting at. I think there is a very interesting question in the industry right now as data becomes, as data has moved out of buyers and media planners' heads into databases and systems and profile, massive data profiles that arguably the stuff is more portable than it's ever been before, right? And, for a big organization like Peugeot, there are all these companies claiming to manage the data, have DMPs and all this stuff, and new companies evolving that they're claiming, to have business models associated in data that I think arguably could be quite scary for a big advertiser, right? That's trying to protect its data and stop any of its profiles sort of seeping out into the web. I mean, I know that's obviously the trust on which the agency world is built right now, but I think that I don't know if any of you, the guys who work at agencies, want to respond, but I think that's also why the industry is now beginning to see, the folks like the IBMs and the Accentures and the McKinseys and all these guys like hovering around, claiming that they have a rightful place in the management of the data and the analysis. I mean, is that sort of, I don't know if anyone wants to respond to that.
Maybe just a point. Today when I work with ad network or a trading desk, I'm not they are collecting data for me, okay, but I'm not sure they don't use it for any other clients. Not competitor, I hope, but for any other clients, I'm not sure. So that's why I'm pointing the fact the propriety is important for me.
Yep. So, okay, I got a sort of a card saying shut up in a few minutes. Anyone want to ask this distinguished group of guys some questions? Anything here that? Oh, got a few questions. Richard.
Hi guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time talking about the right of a consumer to dictate how and where their data is used. I can't help but wonder whether we spend far too much time focusing on that side of the debate and not enough time focusing on the fundamental value exchange that happens between consumers and publishers online in terms of the provision of content and services and the way that advertising funds that. Because you look at Facebook and consumers are willing to share huge amounts of personal data willy-nilly on Facebook without really caring too much about what happens to it, because they understand that by providing that data, it's an integral part of that service, and there's a value exchange that happens there. And I think it's almost like we don't spend enough time educating consumers about the way in which their data is used to basically fund the services that they use, you know, across the internet. And if we spent more time focusing on that collectively as an industry, actually we might be able to bypass this whole problem.
Yeah, I think that was sort of part of what we were trying to tease out here. I mean, it's an but there's a huge amount of fear on the backside of the data that they're giving them, right? So I think, I don't think it's that clear.
But I'm not sure how much fear there actually is. I wonder whether we talk this up too much as an industry. And you were talking before about the do not track rates on Firefox. So Fraser just did some checks, and I think it's on desktops it's closer to about 9%. So, you know, the opt-out rates in relative terms are still pretty small. And across the board, you know, since the Privacy Directive has been implemented in the UK, a more explicit opt-out notices have been placed on websites by, for example, Evidon. You know, they're reporting very, very low opt-out rates still. And I just can't help but get the sense that actually consumer behavior in this area is largely driven by apathy. And we just inflate our perception of how much consumers care about this stuff.
What was the other question? Does anyone want to respond to that, by the way?
I'll just say one thing, and I agree with you. And I think if you think about some of the data breaches that there have been over the last 12 months, and I think about one in particular, you know, the PlayStation 3 breach, you know, people have very short memories as long as what that company is providing goes back, adds value and delivers them something. But again, I think one of the greatest fears that any company that holds customer data has at the moment is this Armageddon or Pearl Harbor moment. But I think what we see is, yes, I think, as I said earlier, you know, it's not so much of an issue to certain parts of the population. But again, the consumers have fairly short memories. It doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's good, but unfortunately they do.
We've got time for one final question. Oh, you want to come back, Richard?
This one.
I was just going to say in response to that, it feels like, you know, following on from the presentation from Frederick this morning, a large part of the reason that we've got ourselves into this mess is that we've got just clever enough with the data to be really stupid. And if we weren't being really stupid with it and effectively using the data power to retargeting that, you know, follows consumers around the internet and makes them notice it in a way that actually detracts from the experience, then they really wouldn't care, because it wouldn't have an impact on them. So if we can get smarter about the way in which we use the technology and the way in which we use it to craft experiences, actually I don't think consumers will care, because it will just seamlessly blend into the overall web experience in the long term.
I like where we're going. We're ending on a note where maybe data doesn't suck at all. One final question.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So really continue along the same thread, really. You know, I wanted to ask a little bit like, are we really looking at data in the right way? Obviously, the sort of data that we're collecting at the moment is we're almost observing their behaviors from a distance. It's like looking at CCTV, and no wonder there are, you know, privacy issues sort of raising their head. There was a book that was published about 10 years ago called the Cluetrain Manifesto. I don't know if you've read it, but it says that all markets are really just conversations. We're not really having conversations with consumers. We're just sitting there observing their behavior, collecting that data, and then trying to make an inference about what they really mean to do. What we need to start doing maybe is listening a bit more to them and start listening to their true intentions when it comes to consuming things. And I think, you know, browser features like Do Not Track, although perhaps needing, you know, more work to flush them out about what they really can be, could possibly be tools that listen to what consumers really want and give them the opportunity to make a declaration that, hey, you know, I can't avoid advertising, but if I have to consume it, here's the sort of advertising I'm really interested in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we definitely need to adapt to the fact that in the past we've been messaging customers that were extremely passive in front of a TV or browsing through a magazine to a new crowd that is extremely active in consuming media and being interactive with it. So we need to find a new paradigm on how we message them, how do we interact with them, and how we make them engage with the brands we are pushing.
Okay, well, I think Ricky's getting tired of me right now. So panelists, I really want to thank you and really appreciate the discussion. So thanks a lot. Thanks, guys.